Shut up and sit down.
Welcome everybody to the DwnFwdPUNChcast, episode 17. I'm your host, Jason Saris, and with me is David Reed.
That is me, and we are here to talk about
Nintendo.
Yeah.
We're talking about Nintendo's E3 conference.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really their conference. I mean, they kind of do their own thing, right? Nintendo's always got to do
25-minute. Here's a handful of games.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, I was really weirdly. I was like extremely underwhelmed at like even after all the cool announcements and stuff. I was still kind of like, where's like the other stuff? Like, where's more of what you were gonna give me? Yeah. I felt like there was a very like lack of games in a sense. There's a handful of games that I don't care about, and then there's a handful of games that I didn't know about, and then there's a handful of games that I was like, whoa, this is gonna be great. But you know, again, much like when I mentioned with Sony, like I was like super crazy about Sony, and then the more I thought about it, I was kind of like, yeah, their conference was fine. You know, Nintendo kind of struck me the same way. I was kind of like, ugh, failed. You guys blew it again. And then I like started like kind of thinking about it, and I started watching the Nintendo Treehouse, like the 3-day Treehouse event they had, and then I was like, I think Nintendo kind of killed it again this year. Like, in a weird way, they somehow rose to the occasion and got me excited again.
I just gotta say, and maybe it was just me, but when Reggie came out, he started getting like oddly like philosophical, and it was just creeping me out.
Can we talk about his hand movements? The clench, open. Here's a game that we're going to talk about that you haven't heard about, but maybe you have heard about. And it's like literally just nonstop, just this and this and this. It cracks me up.
As a whole, I like Reggie. I think that I think he's really personable. He seems very genuine. He seems like a nice guy. It seems like he does relate to the U.S. market much better than a lot of the other Nintendo figureheads do. But his weird comment, like in the beginning, where he was like, if it's not fun, it's not a game, and if it's not a battle, then it's not fun. And like this little thing he was doing, I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is like?
It's almost like they're trying to apologize for things in their own weird Nintendo way.
Yeah,
that most likely ran through like 14 focus groups and be like, do you think this will relate to people? And
they're like, no, and they're like, I think so anyway. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what they think, it's what we think.
Exactly, yeah.
Nintendo, it doesn't matter what you think, it's what we think.
We'll tell you what you should think. Yeah, it was odd. I mean,
yeah, it is. It's always odd. There's never one where you're just kind of like sitting there with bated breath.
I would say that this met my expectations for Nintendo. Actually, I would say that it exceeded it slightly because of one particular announcement we'll get to later. But as far as the way that it was presented and the overall, content, it was about what I expected it to be.
The 25 minutes went really quickly, but I started to realize something, and I think that this is if I understand it the way that they're intending it to. I think that I'm very excited now about every future Nintendo E3, even though they kind of broke, like, aside from the whole, like, let's have our own conference, like, or we do this thing on stage, and it's always really awkward and weird, right?
Well, they got to control the message a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Too many things could happen that you don't account for when you have a planned presentation.
From a pretty reputable place, and they were just like, Nintendo is actually ahead of the game right now. And I was like, in the way that they deliver through E3. And I was like, maybe you're right. Like, you actually might be right about that. And because, think about it, like, they do this thing where it's like, they give you these Nintendo Directs, right? Where they're just like, here is stuff coming out. We have a few little talking points, and then it's just trailers. Well, isn't that what Sony did this year? Isn't that essentially what Microsoft did this year? But they do it in a much more shortened, controlled format, and it really just gets the point across. I wish it was an hour long. I always do, right? More is better, in a sense.
It just feels less like an event to me. I mean, E3 is so exciting because it's an event, right? I mean, people get hyped up for it because there are people that are there, and there's people that can talk about what they see, and they see it from different angles and perspectives, and there's a lot of chatter afterward. Like, with a Nintendo Direct, it's not an event. It's a program.
And they give you like 14 of them a year, so it's kind of like just another Direct. Yeah.
And you all see the exact same thing as it, you know what I mean? Like, even something as so simple as, I was closer to the sitar player by the waterfall, and, I had this experience, and then they could tell to somebody else, and then you kind of hear that through the grapevine. Even that is still, like, interesting to kind of seek out, with Nintendo, it is exactly what it is, and that's the same experience for everybody.
But now, so then, okay, so I learned something about E3 this year that I'm almost embarrassed to admit, but I didn't really realize it, okay? You had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of conferences, right? And I actually knew somebody that went to E3 this year, and this is kind of how I realized where I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize E3 worked this way. So you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, where they have these conferences, right? And then, like, starting on Tuesday, or I think Wednesday or whatever, it's then the actual start of the actual convention where people go in and start to play games and start to visit and everything. And I was always like, oh, I always thought that was all kind of like congruent, like it was all at the same time. Like Sony's thing is at 9 p.m., but people are there from, 12 to 9 and whatever doing their thing. Now, it turned out it's kind of like exclusive only, press and the developers. And then like the next 3 days after all that's done is like all the people that show up. And I'm thinking like, oh, how cool is that? So really E3 is like 6 days instead of 3.
Right. The presentations are only a couple days.
Right. And so, like, obviously we always get little tidbits of news or little things that you didn't see during a conference. Like much like we mentioned Gran Turismo, like there was a trailer. It just didn't show up at the conference. It showed up later. Well, then Nintendo does this thing where they do these Treehouse events where they just have a bunch of people and they talk about games and they play games. But what I didn't realize is that they announce new games during these Treehouse events. It wasn't a ton, but there was one very significant one that was very cool. And then, like... One of the other things about their Treehouse event I thought was great is that one of their announcements was a Yoshi game just called Yoshi. It was just like, hey, here's a working title of a new Yoshi game. And we're like, whatever, thanks. And then they had a 30-minute preview demo thing during the Treehouse event, like maybe on the second day. And I watched it and like couldn't believe what I was visually seeing. I'm like, the trailer did this game zero justice. The 30-minute like gameplay demo when they explained what was going on and how it was created and the mindset. Oh my god, sign me up for Yoshi 2018. I am so pumped for that game. But that's... Nintendo felt like 3 days versus 25 minutes. That's what I was very excited about. I thought that they did a great job with that.
Yeah, they're known for doing their own thing, and they do that way for a reason. I assume that it's smart people making that decision. But let's get into the nuts and bolts here.
Yeah.
So we saw, we saw a number of new titles that were coming. Most of them were Switch pieces.
They mentioned that previous. They said their direct will be Switch focused completely.
Okay.
And that was why
and they lived up to the promise.
And I literally thought at this point, I'm like, yes, the 3DS is dead. Like, it's gone. Switch only going forward.
Not dead.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, here's a bunch of 3DS games. I'm like,
yep, just kidding. Still
guess what? I got to go buy one tomorrow.
We saw Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Mm-hmm.
Any interest in that from you?
Zero. I played the first one. The first one had this really horrible voice acting, and then it had a really mediocre battle system. And maybe there was a good story somewhere built into that. I have no clue, but I just stopped caring about halfway through.
It's never been my thing, really, either.
But I bought Xenoblade Chronicles when it came out for the Wii U. I think I put 1 hour into that game and then just traded it in. I was like, I don't have any feeling for these characters. I still hate the battle system. So when Xenoblade 2 was announced, or Xenoblade Chronicles or whatever it was, I was like, just whatever.
It's got its market. It's just apparently not us, apparently. Kirby.
I've never liked a Kirby game in my life. I'm sure they're fun, but I haven't played a Kirby game in a long, long time. And when I was younger, I lied. Kirby's Canvas Curse on the 3DS, where you drew the little rainbow tracks, and he would like.
Oh, I didn't play that one.
Oh, that game is great.
The last one I played was Kirby's Dream Land 2.
Okay.
On the original Game Boy, and I very much enjoyed that game. I don't know if I had played it for the first time now, if I would like it as much as I did at the time. But
it was unique back in the day. It was like you suck up enemies, you gain their powers.
But this was like, I mean, maybe I've just been out of touch with Nintendo for a while, but this seemed like the first proper Kirby game in a long time.
It seems like it.
Which is exciting. Like, I like to see that they're bringing back their... Like, Nintendo always uses all of their properties, but they don't always put them in their actual, like, proper type of game. Like, a lot of times they're cameos and other things, or they have, like, weird spin-off games, where this actually seemed like it was a proper Kirby game. So I'm excited. Hopefully, I want to see more, and
this
maybe
isn't a game that you and I are going to go buy right away. But say we hear word of mouth that this game,
it's fun. Yeah.
Do you remember when like Yoshi's Island was marketed as Mario World 2, but you weren't playing as Mario, you were playing as Yoshi with a baby Mario on your back, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that game completely changed Mario World. It wasn't Mario World anymore. It was like its own game. You're like, wait a minute, there's like 30 red coins per level. There's 5 flowers I have to collect. I have to beat this with, 30 seconds on the timer, by collecting these little stars. So there were like 3 little collectible aspects of the level that were all very hard to get all at the same time.
It was a deceptively tough game.
And every Yoshi game from that point has been extremely difficult.
Yeah.
The DS one, Yoshi's Island DS, for the original model DS, took me over 3 months to finish completely.
Jeez.
I mean, that game was brutal. But every Yoshi game subsequently after that has been just as hard, which is why I'm now a Yoshi fan, and I'm kind of like, I'm sold. You give me a Yoshi game, I know it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
The problem I have with Kirby is I feel like Kirby is always going to be Kirby. Like, what do you do in Kirby games?
I don't know.
You just beat the level?
That's almost what it intrigues me about it now, is just to see, like, is it being modernized somehow? Like, is there some sort of evolution to Kirby that we're going to see
Right.
now? I mean, we didn't see a whole lot of it in the Nintendo Direct.
The only one that ever really interested me was Kirby's Epic Yarn, which is where the whole like Yarn Yoshi concept came from with Woolly World. And I thought maybe like Epic Yarn would be fun, but I still never even got into that. I never even bothered playing it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Kirby's always been like that weird like black sheep Nintendo franchise that I've always just avoided.
Yeah. Well,
Every single time.
We'll see what they do with it.
Yeah.
One of the predictions that I had made on our E3 predictions episode was a proper Pokemon Switch game, which it looks like we're getting. Pokemon, I forget what it was called now, but there's going to be some sort of
there is no name. This is something Nintendo.
It's just a working, or they don't even have a working title.
They don't have
right?
one. But Nintendo did something really strange this year, and we don't necessarily have to jump the gun on the next announcement, the big one. But the one thing that I felt that Nintendo did very out of character this year was like give us things that they didn't really have much to go on. Like normally when they announce something, they announce it with purpose. This was like the first year they were kind of like, we got some cool things happening. We're not going to tell you anything about them, but we just want you to know that maybe we've heard a few of your comments online, and we know you're looking for X amount of games, whatever.
That's a great point, and I think you're right. This seemed like it was the evolution of Nintendo. And
slowly,
and I mean baby steps.
Yes,
Everything with Nintendo is baby steps. But we see them take a different approach than they had in the past, and a lot of that, it's your point, is like normally you don't know something's coming until it is
ready,
very, very far along in the process.
Yes.
Even with like something like Breath of the Wild, which ended up getting retooled a bunch because it was going to be
only a 2-year delay
Wii U to the Switch. I'm sure that game was basically done before they decided to change it up to make sure it goes to the next console. So Nintendo is notorious for doing that, and they started teasing us with stuff this year. All right, so let's talk the Zelda DLC pass that we're finally seeing a little bit more of. Is anybody super interested in this? Because I am not. So far, this is not doing it for me.
I'm really excited. There are 4 main components to this DLC.
Okay.
There's this map tracker that gives you roughly up to 200 hours worth of lines on your map that shows you where you've been and where you haven't. I think to that degree, I'm very excited because there's so much in this game I haven't seen yet. And I'm kind of excited to be like, I haven't been in this entire region. Like, I want to go down there and see what's going on, right?
That's fair.
Then there is the masks, like in the outfits and whatever, right? Like that may not be important to you, but they have some functionality. The Korok mask will tell you when you're near one, which is really cool because like sometimes you're not quite sure. So like this way you can collect more of those and upgrade your inventory.
Yeah, and I mean that's helpful. I mean, considering there's 900 of these things, I have 70 hours into this game, and I've collected
45.
I've collected, I think like 80 or 90 of them. I mean, I don't know where all 900 should be. So maybe that would be helpful.
All 900 though. You get the golden turd.
The golden turd?
Yeah, you literally get a golden turd when you collect them all. It does nothing. It has no purpose in the game.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really weird. So there's that. I said there's 4 main components, right? What is I can't remember what the 4th one is. There may not even be a 4th one, but the costumes are cool, the masks and stuff. And then there's this Trial of the Sword or something they call it, right? Which is you haven't gotten to the island where you have to like you start with nothing, like bare bones. Start with like a branch. You got to figure out your way to like solve this little. It's like almost like a mini game.
I've been to an island, but it doesn't sound like this. So I don't think so. No.
It's in the southernmost part of the map.
Okay.
You'll see like a little like glowing like shrine out there, and it's kind of like right directly behind that. But if you go out there and check out this thing, this island took me like 6 hours initially to finish, and it's already part of the main game. But you start off with nothing, and you have to like solve these like pretty much like you're on an island with nothing, and you have to like get these like 3 little golden balls into like these platforms. But it's very easy to die, and you literally have none of your equipment, right? So what they're doing is they're doing this thing where this Trial of the Sword, once you've completed it, will give you an upgrade to the Master Sword. Which I think is really cool, because the Master Sword, it breaks, but it recharges. It comes back to you, unlike every other weapon in the game, which breaks and goes away forever.
Sure.
So there are ways to, like, it's not like just your simple concept of puzzles where it's like move the box to the pressure plate to open the door kind of a thing. It's like you might have to find ways to creatively get weapons off of enemies by using like your bombs or whatever, right? And what's cool is like there might be like a giant open pit in the middle of the level, and you have to go to these little platforms on the outer skirts of it. And maybe you have to like drop your bomb in a specific place to like knock the guy into a wall rather than putting it here, which is much more easy to do, and knocking him into the pit, which means you lose his weapon. So there's going to be a ton of that. There's a bunch of different levels and rooms and puzzles and harder enemies to fight. But if you successfully complete it, you'll get your upgrade, which I think is really cool. That to me sounds awesome, honestly. I love the island, so I think it's cool.
I mean, it's extra things. And if you're super into the game and you really want just anything more you can do, I guess that's fine. I love the game. This just doesn't seem to me like it's worth spending the $20 for. And I guess it's only $10 worth of value. So I want to see what the new story elements from DLC pack number 2 are before I'm ready to invest in the expansion pack.
It has something to do with like Ballad of the Heroes. It has something to do with like the 4 main hero characters that you meet in these like dungeon-esque things, like the Divine Beasts.
And I think we saw a teaser for that too, right? I mean, it seemed just where you saw the 4 heroes or whatever.
Yeah, it has something to do with like this bird. He's like singing a song, and you find him all throughout the world or whatever, which is cool.
Oh, I didn't know I was going to meet you here.
Yeah, exactly. And he starts telling you about stuff, and that's fine. But
I have this song that I don't understand what the lyrics are. The lyrics are, "Go up to the mountain and find the shrine." I can't imagine what that is. Every time you see him, he's like, here's the most straightforward lyric.
It's really cool, though. He actually plays a tune. I can't remember what it is, but it's like, I think it's from Wind Waker, actually, or something.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of neat. So if you know that little tidbit of information,
that's a neat nod.
Yeah, so that hopefully should be cool, because that'll be like a whole story element. It covers, like, look, and don't get me wrong, the champions in the game have really cool stories. Like, just remember, like, every one of these champions essentially is like something happened to them, and you have to kind of like see that in the game, to not spoil anything, obviously. But I'm really excited to get a little bit more backstory on these people, so I think it's kind of cool. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
There's amiibos coming out to represent them.
Yep.
I'm very happy I was able to secure
big
all
amiibo
13
guy.
of them.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
There were a lot of amiibos that were announced at Nintendo's conference, and I was really mad because I'm like, okay, can't wait for this one to be Walmart exclusive, Best Buy exclusive, Amazon exclusive. Nope. They were all just whoever carries them, whatever. Nice. I got all 13 reserved. Yes.
Moving on. Rocket League has been announced for Switch, which seems awesome. I mean, like, that seems like a really great title to put on the Switch, because Nintendo doesn't have a lot of online capability now, so this is a reason for people to give their online, service a try. Yeah, and cross-play.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely big.
Now you can play with your Xbox and PC buddies, but not PlayStation, because they are sticks in the mud.
That is true. I really love Rocket League. I'm really bad at it, but I like it. And I think that this is a great game to throw on the Switch. In fact, it was funny, like, during their initial, like, teaser into the official announcement, they showed Rocket League, and you're like, what, are you kidding me? And then they officially announced it like 10 minutes in.
And the hats?
The Mario hats. You get that? That's kind of cool. Yeah. That's kind of what Rocket League is all about.
Is wearing hats?
Your cosmetic stuff.
Is that about just wearing hats?
It's about wearing hats and hitting a giant ball.
Hats. See how many times I can say hats.
Hat League. Can't wait.
Rocket hats.
Rocket hats. Speaking of hats,
we got to see a lot more of Mario Odyssey.
Yes.
And Jesus H. Christ, does this game look good.
It sure does.
Oh my God. Like, I am so excited for Mario. I pre-ordered it. Can't wait. This seems like it is the most similar to Mario 64 that we've seen, and I know that they say that every single time a Mario comes out, somebody says it about it. I never find that to be the case. I mean, they have Mario in them, so I guess they're kind of in the ballpark. But this one seems to me like it might be fairly close to being in the same vein as Mario 64, which is great. It's exciting to me. One of my favorite games of all time.
We had a conversation at one point about like how like Nintendo does this thing where like they have a franchise that we're all very familiar with, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't get to see this game every 2 or 3 years. Like maybe it takes 5 years for the next one to come out. But every single time it comes out, there are going to be the people that go like, oh, just another Mario game. But like every single time I've seen one, like every one of them has been different enough.
Yeah.
You know, like Mario 64 felt like Mario Sunshine, but not anywhere near this exact same type of game. Mario Sunshine was completely different from Mario Galaxy. Then Mario 3D World came out, and that was completely different from any other Mario game.
Yep.
Every one of them feels fresh. And I like that. Like this one, yeah, I've had to wait a few years for me to get my hands on this one. It's finally coming out in just a few months. But like, this doesn't feel like a typical Mario game to me. Like, I believe that the city is your hub. It's going to be enormous. Like Spider-Man-esque enormous, it almost looks like. But I believe it's like your hub. You go into these different worlds. You collect X amount of moons instead of stars. Not quite sure what that is all about yet.
We'll find out.
Maybe there's a cool story. Something about Bowser marrying Princess Peach.
Yeah, and
she carries a bouquet full of piranha plants.
Yeah,
it was very cool.
And Bowser and all these white wedding suits, they all look like a P. Diddy video.
Cause it's bad boy for life.
It's like that Godzilla, like remember the Godzilla music video he made? It's like
Here
that.
I am, let me in your ear, see my call. But like P. Diddy's a terrible rapper. That guy can make some sweet beats, but as far as like actual rapping skills go,
his clothing line is much better.
Got something to be desired. Yeah.
But yeah, and then like on top of that, there are no power-ups in this game. Did you notice that? Like no fire flowers, no stars, no.
Yeah, but you have a hat that makes you do 1,000 things.
Well, that's what's so cool. Like, is that they took this hat concept and they're like, you can be any enemy in the game. Well, roughly.
Yeah,
within reason.
In the trailer, or the thing we saw during the direct, we saw him as a Goomba, as a turtle, as a star, as a dinosaur,
as a bullet bill and flying around,
as a person.
Then there's the
Mario was like
mode.
a live person in New Donk City.
Yeah. Did you see the 8-bit mode? By the way,
I think I
they
did.
briefly showed in the trailer,
I think I saw
and I
just
almost
a
missed
snippet,
it.
yeah.
But when I was watching like some of the Nintendo Treehouse stuff, they showed the scene where like you're like going up like a pillar, like up like this or whatever, and like every time you're doing it, like it looks like old 8-bit Mario. Like you go into the brick wall, much like that Zelda game that came off the 3DS where you turn to the portrait, and like the old bullet bill is all super 8-bit. But then like when you jump out, you pop back right into 3D Mario again. You can throw the hat. There's a co-op mode in the game.
Really?
I just learned about that today.
Oh, that's cool.
Not quite sure exactly what it entails. I think one person controls Mario, the other one's the hat. Something along those. It doesn't sound revolutionary, but whatever.
Sure.
That's a thing.
All this sounds very fun. It also sounds kind of complicated. I just hope that it's not too complicated to be a fun Mario game.
Good news. Reggie just wants to make games that are fun, man.
That's true. Yeah.
He even said it.
Yeah. But if it's not challenging, then it's not a battle. And if it's not a battle, it's
Then
not
it's
fun.
not fun.
And if
And
it's
then
not fun, then
it's not a
evil
game.
becomes hate, and hate becomes the dark side. I don't know.
It's something like that.
Something like that. So then that takes us to the big reveal.
Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem, not what I was thinking, but
Yoshi.
also not what I was thinking. There's one more. It's the game that everybody always wants and nobody buys.
Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon.
No. I'm talking about Metroid Prime 4.
How can you not buy a game that's not out yet? Your logic is flawed.
Metroid is historically the game that people always want to ask Nintendo for, and then it comes out and it has pretty low sales, which is why we haven't seen one in a long time.
We've also seen 2 really bad ones since the last good one.
But the point of this is that we're finally getting a Metroid Prime 4. Very excited.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it'll be good. Just for love of God, don't screw this up, Nintendo.
3 years from now when it comes out.
Yeah.
All they did was show us
All
a
this
trailer.
is it's in development.
It had a big S and then a 4, and then it came Metroid, and everyone recognized the music, and we were like, ah. But this is very unconventional for Nintendo.
It is, yeah.
They don't do this kind of stuff. They
Never.
release things very strategically, and they've even come out and said that every single game that they release information on has been essentially planned and thought out. And this is Nintendo kind of making good on something that I feel like they're very bad at, which is having any transparency with their audience, right? Like, everyone assumes they're making a Metroid, but you'll never know until they're like, guys, it's 75% done, but that means it's still 3 years away. This game is now, like, a title screen, which means it's probably a decade away.
Probably.
But it's
in development.
Yes.
It'll be on the Switch, too.
At some point. Did you mean also?
Oh, no, I meant the second Switch.
I hate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that wasn't the
It'll be
only
on the
Metroid
Switch
game.
U.
I think we got 2 Metroid games, didn't we?
When?
Weirdly enough.
Oh, during the Direct?
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Direct only had one, but the Treehouse event afterward did have another Metroid game. They announced for the 3DS Metroid Samus Returns, which is a remake of the original Game Boy game Metroid 2 Return of Samus.
So apparently, this is like very near and dear to your heart.
It is. I love Metroid 2. I played the hell out of this game. I mean, this was one when I was a kid, and I played it, from beginning to end, probably multiple. I can't even remember how many times. Ton of fun, really good game. And when I'm watching this thing during the Direct, it looks like shot for shot like the same game. At least the part that I saw. Only it's been beautified in so many. You have some depth to it, and everything looks better. Obviously, coming from the original Game Boy, this is a leaps and bounds technology-wise of what it can do. There's new elements too. I think there's a map on the second screen that you can use in different ways than you could the map in the original one.
It has scamples in it.
Scamples? Tell me more.
So in the original Metroid, and I always like to think about this scene, or the one part in the original Metroid, where when you first come down the elevator and you start the game, and to the left is your first upgrade, the morph ball, right? And then you start to move to the right, because that's the only other way you can go. And you're walking around, and if you're one of those weird people that just started shooting around for no reason, I think there's enemies in the ceiling, you accidentally might have noticed that there is a missile, an missile upgrade up in the ceiling, but you can't reach it. There's no possible way to reach it. So you're like, cool, what do I do with this? Well, you can't get it until you get the space jump, which is way later in the game, right? But it's something cool you can come back to. Yeah. Well, once you realize that there were things hidden in the environment, you're like, I got to shoot every single block. And granted, during the 8-bit days, everything was very square, right? So it's like block, 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 block. Good Lord, you'd literally be shooting forever, up, down, left, right. I mean, your entire complete, area around you, if you felt like trying to find everything.
Oh, I remember playing the game just going literally along every wall. Once you cleared an area, you would just have to jump and see, any wall that I can get to, I have to go the entire room and then just...
And sometimes, though, it didn't even lead to just an upgrade. Maybe it was a secret passage that actually led you to an elevator that would take you down to an actual part of the level, which you're like, whoa, if I didn't ever do this, I never would have been able to progress. So sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith, right, and just, shoot things and see what happens. Well, in this game, it has a scan pulse. Okay. Or as Nintendo Direct people like to call it, scamples, which I thought was ridiculous.
They were just kind of saying the words to rush together.
Yeah, it was she's like, I'm going to use my scamples, and I was like... Just say scan pulse, please. Scan pulse is a very strange word when said quickly together. But anyway, some new features and upgrades and things like that. It looks like they're going to elaborate on the story maybe a little bit more. And then this cool aiming thing, like we were talking earlier, of you can shoot 12, 3, and 6 in every other Metroid game, but in this one you can shoot 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way down in this cool little arc. Yep. So it's you have complete control over where your bullets go. Dude, we forgot to talk about this. You can punch things and stun them in this game.
What?
There's this crazy melee function in the game.
I missed that.
Oh my god,
That's
it looks
sweet.
Awesome. An enemy might be coming down really fast at you, and you kind of you uppercut this thing, and it slows down the game for a second, and you're able to go and just shoot a little. Dude,
I like this.
Sweet.
I want to punch a Metroid in the face.
Oh, you can't.
Punch
It'll
a
just suck your
Metroid in
health
its
away.
stupid hook mouth.
Anyway, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was actually kind of ugly looking when I first saw it, but apparently in real life it looks very good. To me it looks like Metroid 64, which never was a thing. But it looks, very 64-ish. But again, I've never played Metroid 2 really all that much, so I don't really know a whole lot about it.
I mean, it looks like Metroid 2, only it looks much
But I'm
prettier.
a big Metroid fan. I've even played the bad ones.
Yeah.
Like Other M, which we will not talk about ever.
The only other thing I can think of is we did get some more info about the Mario Rabbids Quest for the Kingdom. What's the official title? Yeah,
it's a Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Kingdom Battle, that's it. Yeah,
and it's a collaborated Ubisoft/Nintendo game. Interesting fact, it's the only game where Mario has ever carried a gun. It's not really a gun, but we like to call it a gun.
Technically...
It's a blaster.
Miyamoto's never said that Mario wouldn't have a blaster.
Yeah.
So maybe blasters don't count.
But what about bullet bills?
Bullet bills, they come out of
cannons.
Bullet blasters. I don't know. Maybe they're just... I mean, he's got a face and a personality, so maybe he just is.
Yeah. Well, this game was one of the worst kept secrets about at E3. Everyone knew it was coming out.
Yep.
There were like I follow.
I mean, we talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago because it was the artwork had leaked.
Yeah.
And so people were hip to this.
You love the Rabbids. I can't stand the Rabbids
Love the
concept. I
Rabbids.
think it's stupid.
That's why I love them. They're so stupid.
I do follow. I follow like a music creator like for video games online. Grant Kirkhope. He's the guy that does. He did like a lot of the soundtracks for a lot of Rare games back in the day, like. Probably like Blastcore and Banjo and GoldenEye and other things like that. The music he did is very good and it's very well known.
Yeah.
He even went back for Ukulele, which I thought was great too. So when I heard he was working on a secret project, and I kept reading the comments, and I was like, "We all know what you're working on. Just tell us. It's Rabbids Kingdom Battle, whatever it's called." And he wouldn't tell anyone, and then like eventually the game got announced, and he's like, "I'm so excited to announce this game." Everyone's like, "Yeah, we knew, whatever." but that has me excited too because the music that he creates in games also kind of creates another layer of interest in these games for me. So not only is he involved, then like this whole like Mario Ubisoft thing, I didn't really buy into until I saw the gameplay. This game reminds me of Mario RPG. Meets like the tactic style battling of like an XCOM or any of the various other tactics game. A lot of people are comparing it to XCOM. I guess that's the most recent iteration of tactic style gameplay that we can call it. But to me, immediately my mind goes to like Final Fantasy Tactics or Ogre Battle or Disgaea, things like that. But it looks super elaborate. Like there are like team moves and like you can hide under cover and there are boss battles in the game.
It looks gorgeous too. I mean, it looks really
so good.
Yeah.
What a huge surprise.
It ended up being much different than I thought it was going to be. I'm still interested in the game, but I was at first thinking it was going to be like kind of like a party game. Like, cool, this could be some nonsensical fun. I could use something that just like
every
a
other
throwaway
Wii Rabbids game, right? Which
is
basically a mini game fest of garbage.
Yeah, and that's what I was expecting, just something like that. Then they started playing the trailer or the gameplay footage, and I'm like, oh wait, is this like an actual like
their
adventure?
abilities.
I thought it was like almost like a platformer, like a weird like co-op platform.
It looks like it at first.
And then I got even more excited, and then I ended up seeing it's the XCOM thing. I'm like, all right, well, I scaled this back a little bit. Still interested, but it's just I've been a wide range of emotions.
Oh yeah, and like I noticed like there's like inventory screens where you can collect new items and upgrade your abilities and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're not a big fan of the Rabbids, I believe you can just stick with the Mario crew, like the Luigi, Peach, Toad, Yoshi kind of a thing. But if you want, you can play as like Rabbids Luigi or Rabbids Yoshi, that kind of a thing.
Yep.
I thought that was really cool too. So this game has me super, super pumped. And I think it comes out like in 2 months.
Yeah, I don't think it's too far away.
No, I'm really excited about this game. I love strategy, and I just love Mario, and I'm really excited. So the Rabbids thing I could do with or without, but to be honest, I'm willing to give it a total like blank slate.
You'll have fun with it.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that was such a really cool thing because that wasn't really even a Nintendo announcement. It was a Ubisoft announcement. But then Nintendo showcased it, obviously, and stuff. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is that I learned something about E3 this year that kind of confused me in previous years that I never really paid attention ever since Nintendo kind of abandoned the whole press conference thing, right? So, like, they do, like, their announcement, and then they have, like, 3 days of their Treehouse events, which I thought was really fascinating because it's like having 3 full days of Nintendo events going on. Whether you've seen the same game they're showing 3 other times or whatever, but there's the potential for them to announce new stuff during these events, and you don't know when. And primarily, all the new stuff that was announced was all 3DS. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you're sitting there and you're watching the press conference, you're like, so the 3DS is obviously dead, right? Because all they're talking about is Switch games. Then they're like, welcome to the Treehouse. Here's a bunch of 3DS games, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're talking about. I'm like, oh, okay. Like the sushi game, Sushi Strikers, has the greatest soundtrack song. No, sorry, not soundtrack. It has the greatest theme song for a DS game that looks so dumb. But I'm going to go home and drive the entire way home and listen to this song probably 30 times. Nice. I cannot wait. It is like the coolest, most energetic, high-energy song I've ever heard. And it's for a silly little puzzle game with Ron Sushi. I have no idea.
Sushi Strikers.
Yes.
Check out the soundtrack. Going platinum.
We'd show it, but Nintendo will shut us down.
That's true, yeah.
So,
anyways, that's our thoughts on the Nintendo's, Nintendo Direct for E3. Like this video, share it with your friends, and comment down below. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, too. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow the group at DwnFwdPunch. That's at DwnFwdPUNCh. If you want to follow me, I'm at Sergio Armani. And Dave, how do you want people getting a hold of you this time around?
The only place I'm over at is on my Switch, so you're gonna have to find me and friend me. Good news, the two things that we can do on my Switch, I can either best friend you or remove you. There is literally nothing else until that phone app comes out. Oh, Reggie doubled down in the phone app, by the way.
Oh, I'm
in an
sure
interview.
he did.
He's like, "Oh, it's gonna be amazing." We're like,
Yeah, whoa, phone app.
"Cool, can't wait."
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.